The word cinematography has its roots in ancient Greek. It comes from two words. Kinema, meaning movement, and graphein, to write. This put together comes to something like motion writing. Throughout this essay I intend to make several arguments for cinematography being an art form, and therefore for cinematography and cinematographers to be potential artists and art pieces. I will also list some ways that I think the medium could be improved. Alrighty folks. We should first define our terms. If we don't, that may lead to confusion and unnecessary debate. First, what do I mean by art form? By art form I mean a medium that has the creation of art as one of its main functions. This could be writing or filmmaking. This differs from an art medium. Nearly anything can be an art medium. For example, rock carving may not chiefly be an art form, but art can be carved out of rocks. This makes it an art medium. I also must differentiate between art and art form. Lastly, what do I mean by cinematography? Actually, I have two definitions for it. The first is used in reference to what cinematographers do. This means setting up wide shots, speed ramps, close-ups, blurs, pans and zooms, that kind of thing. The second is in reference to the finished product. What you see in a Roger Deakins film is cinematography. Also, I don't believe that all cinematography by the first definition is cinematography by the second definition, in the same way that writing is different from literature and film from cinema. It can look good all day, but it must be art to be real cinematography. My first argument in favor of cinematography as an art form is this. It is storytelling. I believe that storytelling is art, and if cinematography is visual storytelling, it is thereby art. This means that good cinematographers must tell stories through their camera work. The shot must convey the information that needs to be conveyed. This is part of the reason that cinematographers should be directors, as well as being more broadly involved in the filmmaking process in general, or have a say in how the actors, the subjects of this visual story, act. The artist must be able to fill his frame up with the subjects the way he thinks fit. The cinematographer should also know how to light up the frame and even decorate the frame. Once again, I believe that cinematographers should be more versatile in their skills and responsibilities. Jobs that go to set decorators or designers should be handled by the main visual storyteller. If visions are clashing with one another in how things should look, the final product will end up a scattered mess. With crew jobs on a feature film, a good deal of the time is spent sitting around waiting for the director and actors to get it together. And if a cinematographer is busy elsewhere, I think having a reliable assistant or two that he can direct would be advantageous. However, back to the point, cinematography is visual storytelling and should be treated as such. This means that the cinematographer should have total control over the look of his piece. My second argument is this. Cinematography is visual storytelling, but all art is storytelling. The medium is what I'm getting at. The medium that it resembles is the painted work. And it has been largely agreed upon, even if with reluctance, that painting is an art form. It may not largely produce art, but its chief function is to produce art. Just because an art form has been polluted with a million bad so-called artists, it isn't any less an art form. It may not be the most effective art form, but it is still an art form. Therefore, if cinematography is motion painting or digital drawing, then it follows that it is an art form. And I believe that this is demonstrated through the very fact that cinematographers make what are literally called motion pictures. Furthermore, most great cinematographers, Toland or George T. Clemens, for example, have in mind telling the story of the film, which is simply conveying the plot's information in an artistic way. If you pause a shot from something like Seven, The Shawshank Redemption, Barry Lyndon, and so on, you'll notice they look like they could be recreated as paintings. Take these shots from Shawshank at 7:14, 1800 hours, 25:20, 46:20, and so on. I just picked those out at random. And that's the point. You don't know exactly what's going on in the film without dialogue, but if you watch the film in context, you can tell what's going on and how it affects the subjects of the story. You also see the ways that they react to the environments around them and vice versa. Cinematography builds tension like any other medium would. Close-ups and slow motion give intimacy, speed ramps and wide shots broaden the scale of the fictional world. Low angles establish power dynamics. Moving shots give a sense of authenticity, etc. You see the many ways a prison tower can be portrayed. Large and imposing when a major part in the story, hiding in the background as an antagonistic phantom during dialogue. Largely, these shots demonstrate technical skill and they tell the story of the prisoners at Shawshank. And you really have to see the cinematography in context to appreciate it. To only watch one shot would be to look at one painting in a gallery of sequential pieces that told a story. There is, of course, no way of proving that cinematography is art on a large scale. But such is the way with art. You can't make blanket statements. It is a piece-by-piece form. Of course, there is a hidden premise in all this. This is that storytelling is art. When speaking in context of broad abstract ideas, it becomes immediately more enigmatic in trying to prove your point. But let's assume storytelling isn't an art form. Cue my third argument. Argument 3 assumes that storytelling isn't an art form. This is the part where I make a differentiation between storytelling and story making. Storytelling is merely the telling of a story that you or someone else has made. Story making is actually putting together the heart and blood and sinew of the story. Writers, at least good ones, are story makers and storytellers. They come up with an idea for a story and then they tell it. Story making alone gets you a story by credit in a show. Storytelling gets you an adapted by credit. Doing both is what makes you a writer. So, here is what I'm getting at. And this will lead into some big territory, so pay attention. The cinematographers, the storytellers, need to be writers, or story makers. I believe that any good writer should know how to direct and do cinematography and any good director should know how to write and do cinematography and vice versa. The reason for this is the clash of visions I mentioned earlier. Whoever makes the story should preferably be the one telling it, in as many ways as possible, because they know how they want to tell it. Any good cinematographer should know how to draft a script. Any good director should know his way around the anatomy of a camera. At the very least, they should all have an excellent understanding of each other and their visions and they should match up. You notice the best art forms in filmmaking complement the others. Hans Zimmer compositions seem to fit well with Nolan's direction and Pfister's cinematography. One of the films in the Golden Five films considered to be the standard for first-timers, on all fronts, Citizen Kane, has half of its cinematography, as well as all of its directing and writing done by Orson Welles. Did I mention he starred in it? Of course, this means that you won't have as much eye candy with Chris Nolan sending Matt McConaughey into space or Spielberg doing Jaws scenes. Things will be smaller and, frankly, more boring. But I am of the persuasion that films should be more boring. Audiences have become so spoiled with Marvel trash that they can't watch a Hitchcock scene without being bored to tears. The man revered as master of suspense, is being cast off as boring. This is true for art and entertainment on all fronts. Shakespeare is thrown into the fire for Ibram X. Kendi, Capra films are tossed away for gay rom-coms, that's no one-off occurrence. People don't want to watch old, boring stuff anymore. Art is swiftly dying, because people aren't being taught patience. Expectations must be lowered in one area, eye candy, to raise them in another. The quality of stories, this is one of the benefits of giving cinematography and other art forms to the other artists in a film. But first, it must be appreciated as art. And cinematography, like all art, is in an urgent state of disrepair. Tools like CGI, that should have been like a paintbrush to the artist, have started replacing natural lighting and things that make this medium beautiful. To save art, you must first see it. Not appreciating any art form, cinematography or not, is the same as not appreciating cinema, plays, sculptures, music, and literature. We must not let this beautiful form die. It must live on. A film is never really good unless the camera is an eye in the head of a poet. Orson Welles.